Have you ever felt the weight of the years pressing down and wondered, where should I live as I grow older? I don't mean just the physical space. I mean, where should you truly be, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, as you journey into the later chapters of life? Where does your heart seek peace and your mind seek clarity? It's a question that hovers over many of us as the years pass, like a quiet whisper we can't quite ignore. As we age, we begin to seek more than just shelter. We want comfort, companionship, and purpose. But alongside these desires, there is an even deeper yearning for something more: independence, dignity, and above all, inner peace. The kind of peace that only comes from understanding who you truly are and where you truly belong in this world. The Buddha once said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." These words echo with wisdom. But what do they mean when it comes to the choices we face in our later years? How can we balance the past we've lived, the future we fear, and the present we must embrace? The choices we make about where we live in our older years can shape not just our external world, but the very core of our being. What if we told you that the place you call home, wherever that may be, has the power to shape your spirit, to bring peace to your mind, and to nourish your soul? Today, we embark on a journey to explore this question from a fresh perspective, one that draws deeply from the well of Buddhist wisdom. We'll delve into the ways our living environment, whether it's with family, in solitude, or within a mindful community, can profoundly influence our mental, emotional, and spiritual health. But this journey isn't about merely surviving the years. It's about thriving in them. It's about finding a place that doesn't just shelter your body, but strengthens your heart and mind. It's about creating a life that supports your soul, protects your dignity, and fosters a deep sense of belonging. Whether you are living with family, in peaceful solitude, or within a community of like-minded souls. You see, as we get older, the world often tells us we need to slow down, retreat even further into ourselves. But what if we told you that aging isn't about pulling back from life? It's about leaning into it more fully. It's about finding a way to remain fully present, fully engaged, and fully at peace with who you are in this very moment. The question isn't just about where you'll live. It's about how you'll live. How will you craft a life that nurtures your spirit, that allows you to grow in wisdom, that connects you with others in meaningful ways, and that preserves your sense of independence, dignity, and joy? The time to reflect on this is now, not tomorrow, not someday, because the journey toward a fulfilling and peaceful life is one we can start taking today. So let's begin. Take a deep breath and come with us as we explore the true meaning of living in peace, in joy, and in harmony with the wisdom that comes with age. Today we will uncover how to navigate the golden years, not by holding on to the past or worrying about the future, but by embracing the present and making choices that align with your deepest values. Let's begin this journey together. Chapter 1: The Balance of Family and Independence. In many cultures, especially those shaped by Eastern philosophies and Buddhism, there's a deep-seated belief in filial piety, the reverence, respect, and responsibility children hold toward their parents. It's a sacred duty, one that echoes through generations. The idea of multi-generational households is not just practical, but deeply woven into the fabric of family life. Parents are expected to live with their children as they grow older, receiving care, companionship, and the warmth of family bonds in return. It's a beautiful vision, the elderly surrounded by the love of their children and grandchildren, creating a harmonious, tight-knit family unit. Yet, as we dive into this idea through the lens of Buddhist teachings, we begin to see the complexity of such expectations. The Buddha's teachings remind us that suffering arises from attachment to ideas, to expectations, and yes, even to relationships that no longer serve our well-being. When we cling to a belief that living with our children is the only way to ensure happiness in our later years, we risk attaching ourselves to an ideal that may not reflect the reality of our individual needs. It becomes not about nurturing relationships, but about holding on to a concept that doesn't always fit the life we are leading now. Consider the story of Robert and his son Daniel. Robert, a man in his 70s, had always envisioned spending his golden years surrounded by family, where love and warmth would fill the house in every corner. Daniel, his only son, had a small family of his own. And so when Robert's health started to decline and his need for daily assistance grew, he made the decision to move in with Daniel's family. It seemed like the perfect solution. Robert would be close to the people he loved, and Daniel's family would have the opportunity to care for him in his twilight years. But what Robert hadn't anticipated was how much the dynamics of this multi-generational household would shift. The dream of living together in peace and joy soon gave way to the reality of busy schedules, conflicting values, and the stresses of daily life. Daniel and his wife both had demanding careers. Their children, though they adored their grandfather, had their own social lives, school activities, and growing responsibilities. There wasn't much time left for deep family conversations or for the quality time Robert had imagined. Robert, once the head of his own household, now found himself isolated in a house that was never quite home. He was treated with kindness, but something was missing. He felt like a guest rather than a permanent member of the family. The family meals, once an essential part of Robert's life, now became an ordeal. Daniel's family, busy and often tired, no longer prioritized sitting down together at the dinner table. Small disagreements crept in over things as trivial as what food to prepare, how loudly to speak, or how often to gather. And then there were the generational clashes. Robert, who had always valued traditional family customs, found it hard to relate to his daughter-in-law's more modern, often individualistic approach to life. The differences that once seemed insignificant, cultural nuances, lifestyle choices, grew into deep fissures that wore at Robert's heart. One day, after yet another argument over something trivial, Robert sat alone in his room, reflecting. He asked himself, was this the life I imagined? And just like that, the answer became clear. The life he had envisioned, filled with warmth and unity, had evolved into something more complex. While the love was still there, the space for his own independence, his own needs, had been crowded out by the daily hustle of a young family. And so, Robert made a decision. It wasn't one born out of frustration or resentment, but rather a deep realization of what he needed for peace of mind in his final years. With a heavy heart, but a clear mind, he chose to move out. Not far, just into a small apartment a few streets away. He would still be a part of his son's life, but he would also create space for himself, a space where he could breathe, reflect, and live on his own terms. It was an act of courage and self-awareness. In many ways, Robert's decision reflects the middle path, a core Buddhist principle. It's about finding balance, the delicate equilibrium between attachment and detachment, between family bonds and personal independence. Buddhism teaches us that attachment is a source of suffering. When we cling too tightly to a relationship, to an expectation of how things should be, we lose sight of the reality that life is always changing, and we must adapt. But detachment doesn't mean abandonment. It simply means letting go of the rigid hold we have on our expectations to allow space for freedom and growth. Robert's choice, while difficult, became an act of freedom. The relationship with his son and family didn't end, it was transformed. Instead of being physically close every day, they found new ways to connect, ways that honored both Robert's need for independence and Daniel's family's need for space. The visits became more meaningful, the conversations more intentional, and over time, Robert found a kind of peace he hadn't known in years. He wasn't just living for his family anymore, he was living for himself too. There's a powerful Buddhist teaching that says, holding on is believing there is only a past. Letting go is knowing there's a future. Robert had held on to the belief that his later years must be spent under one roof with his children, that the dream of a harmonious family life was the ultimate goal. But by letting go of that attachment, he opened himself to the possibility of a future that honored both his desires and his reality. Robert's story isn't unique. It's a theme we see play out again and again in many lives. As we grow older, we often find ourselves at a crossroads between what we think we should do, based on tradition, societal expectations, or familial duty, and what we truly need for our peace, happiness, and well-being. The beauty of Buddhist philosophy is that it encourages us to step back and look within. It asks us to reflect on our attachments, to understand our desires, and to cultivate the wisdom to know when to let go. Robert's peace came not from living with his family, but from living with himself, from being true to what he needed for his spirit to flourish in his later years. It's a balance many of us will face as we navigate aging, as we seek the best way to live, to remain independent yet connected, to protect our dignity while cherishing our loved ones. The journey is never simple, but it is one we must walk with awareness, mindfulness, and courage. So the next time you find yourself at a crossroads, whether it's deciding where to live, how to interact with your family, or what boundaries to set, remember this: the true path lies not in clinging to what was, but in embracing what is, and allowing the future to unfold in its own way. As Robert found peace in his decision, may we all find the courage to seek balance, to detach from the past, and open ourselves to the future. Let us be mindful of our attachments, and let us walk the middle path with grace and wisdom. For, in the end, it is not where we live that matters most. It is how we live and how we love that truly makes all the difference. Chapter 2. The beauty of solitude. As we age, there's a shadow that often looms large in our hearts: the fear of loneliness. The notion of living alone in our later years is commonly painted with hues of sadness and melancholy. Society teaches us to view solitude with pity, to believe that without the constant presence of others, life loses its vibrancy, that living alone means fading into the background like a forgotten tune. But what if the opposite is true? What if solitude, instead of being a curse, was actually a blessing? Buddhism teaches us that true contentment, true peace, arises from within. It isn't dictated by the number of people around us, nor by the bustle of everyday life. No, contentment is a quiet, deep-rooted thing that grows from the soil of our own hearts. You must learn to be at peace with yourself before you can find peace in the world around you. Let me tell you the story of Sarah, a woman whose journey might just change the way you look at solitude. Sarah, in her early 60s, had just lost her husband to a long battle with illness. It was, as one might imagine, a devastating blow, a loss that left her world hollow and quiet. Her children, well-meaning and full of love, offered what they thought was the obvious solution. "Come live with us in the city, Mom. We can take care of you. We don't want you to be alone." And they were right. In their own way, they were offering her companionship, support, and the warmth of family. The idea was tempting, and the love they offered was undeniable. But Sarah felt a pull in her heart that she couldn't ignore. She had spent her entire life living in the peaceful countryside, in a small, cozy home that was nestled between rolling hills and towering trees. It wasn't just a house to her, it was a sanctuary. The mornings were filled with the soothing sounds of birds greeting the dawn, the evenings with the rustling of leaves as the wind whispered its secrets through the trees. She had learned the art of solitude over the years, and it had become a part of her identity. And so Sarah made a decision that many would not have understood. She chose to stay in her small village home. Alone, she gently turned down her children's offer, explaining, "I appreciate your love, but I need to be where my soul feels at peace. I've lived here for so many years, and I'm not ready to leave this place yet." At first, there were moments of doubt. In the early days after her husband's passing, the house seemed eerily quiet. The rooms that once echoed with laughter now whispered only silence. But Sarah, ever the mindful soul, knew that this was a time for reflection, not despair. Soon enough, something magical began to happen. Instead of feeling lost in the void of loneliness, Sarah began to flourish in her solitude. She found joy in simple, everyday moments. A hot cup of tea in the morning, steam curling up into the air as she gazed out at the hills, the rhythmic sound of her footsteps on the dirt path as she walked among the wildflowers, her mind gently turning inwards. She joined a local Buddhist study group, where she met others who shared her passion for meditation, mindfulness, and the teachings of the Buddha. Sarah would spend her mornings in quiet reflection, sitting by the window, the sunlight streaming through the glass, as she meditated on the impermanence of life and the beauty of each passing moment. She found peace in these moments of stillness. She began to see solitude not as a prison, but as a place of deep, personal liberation. And as Sarah embraced this new chapter in her life, she realized something important. Loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness comes from a feeling of emptiness, the belief that we need others to fill the void within us. But solitude, true solitude, is the presence of oneself. It is a sanctuary, a place where we can reconnect with our own soul and rediscover who we truly are. The Buddha, too, understood the power of solitude. He often withdrew into the forests, away from the distractions of society, not because he feared people, but because he knew that silence is a teacher, a powerful teacher. It is in silence that we hear the whispers of our own heart, the quiet stirrings of our deeper wisdom. The Buddha's time spent in solitude was not about escaping the world, but about understanding it more fully. You cannot travel the path until you have become the path itself. Solitude, in this sense, becomes a teacher, a guide that leads us back to ourselves, back to the truth that lies within. Sarah's story is a reminder to us all that solitude does not equal isolation. It doesn't mean withdrawing from life or shunning the world. Instead, it means finding peace in your own company, learning to listen to your own thoughts and desires, and embracing the freedom that comes from living life on your terms. As we age, many of us face the decision of whether to live alone or with family. Society often tells us that living with others is the only way to avoid loneliness, but Buddhism challenges this assumption. It teaches us that solitude is not the absence of company, it is the presence of oneself. We don't need to be constantly surrounded by people to feel connected to the world. True connection comes from within. It comes from knowing yourself, understanding your needs, and living in harmony with your own soul. The journey of solitude is not an easy one for many. It's natural to fear being alone, especially as we grow older and our social circles become smaller. But if we approach solitude with mindfulness and self-compassion, we can transform it from a fearsome experience into one of great peace. It is in these quiet moments that we can truly hear ourselves, the whispers of our inner wisdom, the call of our true nature. Solitude is not a punishment. It is not a void to be filled with distractions. Instead, it is a rich, fertile ground where we can cultivate a life of purpose, meaning, and deep contentment. Just as a garden flourishes when tended with care, so too does the soul thrive when nurtured in solitude. Sarah's decision to stay in her small village home was not an act of isolation, it was an act of profound self-care. In a world that often encourages constant busyness, solitude can be a radical act of peace. It allows us to reconnect with the rhythms of nature, the ebb and flow of life, and the deep wisdom that resides within each of us. The Buddha's teachings encourage us to embrace solitude, not as a burden, but as an opportunity, a chance to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. For those of you considering living alone in your later years, I encourage you to look at solitude with fresh eyes. It is not something to be feared. Instead, see it as an invitation to explore the depths of your own soul, to walk the path of your own truth, to find peace within, and to embrace the freedom that comes with living on your own terms. As Sarah found in her small village home, there is beauty in solitude. It is in these quiet moments that we can rediscover who we are, reconnect with our own inner peace, and live the life we are meant to live. Solitude is not a place of emptiness. It is a place of fullness, of wholeness, of being exactly who you were always meant to be. So, let us not fear being alone. Let us instead embrace the stillness. Let us listen to the quiet that surrounds us, and let it guide us back to ourselves. For it is only in the quiet moments that we truly hear the song of our own soul. And in that song, we find the peace that transcends all things. Chapter 3. The Community That Heals. For some, neither the warmth of family nor the peace of solitude feels quite right. They crave something more, a deeper connection that goes beyond the confines of their own homes or the occasional family visit. There is another path, a path often overlooked: mindful community living. It's a concept that might seem unfamiliar to those who have only known the traditional ways of aging, but for those who are willing to open their hearts to the idea, it can be a transformative experience. For many years, nursing homes and retirement communities have been seen through a lens of skepticism, sometimes even as a last resort. They're often associated with isolation, neglect, and a loss of dignity, a place where life slows down to an almost unbearable crawl. But what if we chose to view them differently? What if, instead of seeing these spaces as the end of the road, we saw them as vibrant hubs of life? A place where people can come together, learn from one another, and grow, even in their later years. What if we viewed them as places of belonging, of spiritual connection, where wisdom is shared and the lessons of the past are passed down to future generations? Let me tell you the story of Mr. Lee, a man who found his place in a community that nourished not only his body but his soul. Mr. Lee was 80 years old when he made the decision that would change his life. A retired teacher, Mr. Lee had spent many years living alone in his quiet apartment. While he had a successful career and raised a family, as he grew older, he began to feel a deep sense of isolation. His children lived far away, and though they visited when they could, the silence of his home became unbearable. Even the most well-meaning neighbors could not fill the emptiness that settled into his heart. He longed for companionship, for meaningful connections with others who shared his values. After years of resisting the idea, Mr. Lee finally decided to move into a Buddhist-inspired senior living community. It wasn't an easy decision. The thought of leaving behind his familiar surroundings, the quiet corners of his home, where he had spent countless hours reading and reflecting, weighed heavily on him. But he knew deep down that he needed something more. What Mr. Lee found in the community was nothing short of transformative. The very essence of the place was rooted in mindfulness, compassion, and spiritual growth. It wasn't just a place where the elderly came to wait for time to pass. It was a space where people of all ages could come together to share their experiences, their wisdom, and their stories. At the community, he met other like-minded souls who, like him, found solace in meditation, who enjoyed the same deep introspective conversations about life's purpose, and who, too, had a deep appreciation for the beauty of aging with grace. He no longer spent his evenings in solitude, staring at the flickering television screen, but in the company of others who cherished stillness, who sought meaning in every breath they took. Together they shared meals, stories, laughter, and, most importantly, a sense of belonging. The community didn't just offer him a roof over his head, it offered him a renewed sense of purpose. He didn't feel like an outsider or a burden, as he once did in his own apartment. Here, he was a vital part of a living, breathing community, a community that understood the beauty of the present moment and the wisdom that comes with the passing of time. Buddhism teaches us about the concept of Sangha, the spiritual community that supports and nourishes us as we walk the path of life. The Sangha is not just a group of people, it is a collective energy, a space where individuals come together to encourage each other on their spiritual journeys. It is a place where the bonds between people transcend the superficial and connect at a deeper, more meaningful level. Mr. Lee found this sense of community in his new home. He found peace not in isolation, but in the shared wisdom of those who had walked their own paths of struggle, joy, and discovery. If you are considering a community living arrangement, ask yourself this question: does this place nourish my mind, body, and spirit? The answer doesn't lie in the external trappings of the community, its amenities, its location, or even its reputation. The answer lies within the space itself, the people who reside there, the energy that flows through its halls, the sense of connection and support that exists among its members. A senior living community, when approached with an open heart, can be a place of healing, growth, and transformation. It is not a place to simply pass the time, but a place to live fully, to continue contributing, to continue learning, and to continue loving. It is a space where you can learn from others and share your wisdom, where you can create meaningful relationships with those who may be at a different stage of life, but who share similar values. We often hear the phrase, "it takes a village," and in the case of mindful community living, this sentiment couldn't be more true. A community can offer not just companionship, but a chance to connect with others who understand your struggles, your joys, and your journey. In these shared spaces, you are not alone. You are part of something bigger, something more profound. Mr. Lee's story is a powerful reminder that we are not meant to navigate life's later years in isolation. We are meant to be part of a community that nurtures our spirits, that helps us grow, and that provides us with the support we need to live out our days with grace and dignity. It is a place where you can continue to learn, to grow, and to thrive. The beauty of aging is not in solitude, but in connection, in sharing life's precious moments with others who understand and care. So when you think about your own journey into later years, consider the question, how can I create or join a community that nourishes me in all aspects of my being? Whether it's a Buddhist-inspired senior community like the one Mr. Lee found, or a group of like-minded individuals who share your passion for learning and growing, the key is to find a place where you can thrive, not just survive. In the end, it's not about where you live, but how you live. A community that heals is one that brings out the best in you, one that encourages you to continue growing, to continue learning, and to continue loving, no matter how many years have passed. It is a place where you are seen, heard, and valued, not for what you can do, but for who you are. When you find such a place, you will know it. It will feel like home, not just because of the walls around you, but because of the people within it. People who share your journey and who walk with you every step of the way. Together, you will create a community that heals, that nurtures, and that allows each person to live their life with purpose, dignity, and joy. The move to a Buddhist-inspired senior living community wasn't just a change of location. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with connection, growth, and spiritual fulfillment. And it's a reminder to us all that no matter how old we are, the opportunity for transformation and healing is always within reach. Final reflections: choosing your own path. As we draw this journey to a close, one thing becomes abundantly clear. There is no universal answer to where you should live in your later years. No blueprint, no single formula, but there is a right answer for you. And that answer is uniquely yours, shaped by your heart, your spirit, and the values you hold dear. In the end, it's not about following a prescribed path. It's about walking the one that aligns with your true self. The key to finding your way is mindfulness. Being fully present, not just in the world around you, but in your own heart. It means pausing long enough to understand what you truly need, what brings you peace, and what stirs your soul. Whether you decide to live with family, in solitude, or in a community, make that decision with intention. Don't let fear guide you. Don't let societal expectations or the voices of others push you towards something that isn't right for you. Instead, listen to the wisdom of your own heart. What brings you peace? What allows you to honor your independence while also nurturing the connections that matter most? As the Buddha so beautifully reminds us, the only real failure in life is not to be true to the best one knows. So in this moment of reflection, ask yourself, what is the truth I know about myself? What do I need to live with grace, dignity, and joy, even as the years pass? Because, as we've seen, each person's path is different, and the path you choose is the one that best nurtures your spirit and allows you to grow into the person you were always meant to be. The Buddha's teachings guide us to find balance in every step we take, and it's this very balance between family, independence, and community that will bring you the peace you seek. Remember, it's not about being in the right place by anyone else's standards. It's about being in the place that feels right to you, the place that makes you feel whole, the place that allows you to remain connected to your truth. As you embark on this next chapter, let it be a chapter where you choose the path that honors who you are and who you wish to become. Whether that means sharing a home with loved ones, nurturing your independence in the quiet comfort of your own space, or embracing the beauty of community living, the choice is yours. Trust that by walking the path of your own heart, you will create the life that is meant for you. And so, wherever you are, whether surrounded by family, living in solitude, or embraced by a community of like-minded souls, be fully there. Immerse yourself in the present moment, savor each connection, and find the peace that comes with knowing that you are living in alignment with your deepest desires. Because when you are truly present, when you fully embrace the life you've chosen, you will find that you have already arrived. You will find that home isn't just a place, it's a state of being, a place within yourself where peace, joy, and wisdom reside. And it is always there waiting for you to step into it. If you've found value in this journey today, I invite you to take the next step with us. Subscribe to our channel, Quiet Wisdom, for more insights on how to live with mindfulness, purpose, and peace. Your support helps us continue sharing these stories, these lessons, and this wisdom. Thank you for being here, for taking the time to reflect, and for embracing the beauty of the present moment. May you continue to walk your path with grace, and may you always find peace wherever you are. Wherever you are, be fully there, and you will find home.